Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. I hope you find yourself in the right frame of mind, focusing on all the things within your control. All right, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about understanding conversations for the better. So the quality of conversations that you have and how often you have them better your physical and emotional state. As changes in the brain take place, where you can open up and talk about whatever's on your mind. This builds trust within yourself and those that you talk with. The lower quality of the conversations that you have and the more of them hurts your physical and emotional state and closes you down, speaking from fear, caution, and anxiety. And not having conversations shuts you down, making it difficult to process and move beyond what's experienced. The higher the quality of conversations, the greater power it has to change the brain by increasing the production of hormones and neurotransmitters that stimulate body systems and nerve pathways. It transforms the body's chemistry that goes from beyond just that single moment, lasting much longer. The better the conversation is, where you get that feel-good sensation, it triggers higher levels of dopamine and oxytocin, endorphins, and other biochemicals that naturally uplifts you. Those neurochemical reactions that take place in the brain drives a person's state of mind. And this affects so many parts of our day, such as the relationships that we have and how we communicate to build trust with others. Understanding this helps to better navigate what's being experienced, to better process what's going on, gaining perspective to maintain composure that helps make better decisions, resulting into a better outcome. It really does shape your world because the more of what you talk about, the more you focus on, because now it goes beyond just thinking it to saying it out loud and hearing yourself, which reinforces the message from 3 different angles. This is why it's crucial to be careful what you say and be intent in what is said. So when things are rough, mishaps are happening, the natural reaction is to become frustrated, and the tendency to say negative things out loud ignites more fury that throws off concentration to remedy the problem, which can lead to things snowballing for the worse. This is straightforward, that words have power that affect your mood, and the more conscious you are about it, the better chance you have at handling things well. And I understand, it's very difficult to stay composed when things are starting to unravel, where momentum is against you. It can be very annoying trying to have that right language, being positive, saying the right things, because it's almost as if you're lying to yourself, trying to convince yourself that things are not that bad or that they're better than what they really seem. But if you can manage the words to at least not say negative things out loud, it does take away its power, so you're a little less focused on further bad things that you expect to happen. It's okay to complain from time to time, but make sure to have some sort of action that leads to a resolution, because it gets you past what you're facing. With that said, there are different types of conversations that are had, and when you can understand how to use each one, it's a way to improve your overall mental state, simply by ascending from one to another. The first type of conversation is known as transactional, and this is asking and telling. The majority of this is simply giving and receiving information, and generally it's about the things that we already know. It's very limited in the amount of information that's shared and even the creativity, where it's mainly about accessing the right information to take action to execute effectively. The common things such as asking your teachers or your workplace, "What do you want me to do today?" Or "What do you want me to do right now?" And "How do you want me to do it?" Or things like, "Can you pick this up at the grocery store?" Or "Can you run this errand for me?" You can see that it's very limited, and it kind of just makes you fall in line. The next advanced conversation is known as positional, and this is geared to explain what we know and defend our stance on things. It's where we share opinions and are less likely to be open to what others have to say. This is mainly to pitch your ideas or convince somebody else. Things like in a debate, You're explaining why you're advocating for a certain issue, convincing others to be on your side. Other common things are a sales pitch, anyone trying to sell you a service or a product. It's a strong belief in the things that you're convinced or motivated by. So this type of conversation is going to be a bit of a one-way street where the person explains and is the one mostly doing the talking, but it can carry on longer than a transactional conversation. It can be something as simple as, I'm going to explain to you why this is the best pen that is on the market right now, and you have the opportunity to buy it at this discounted price, and then go on from there. And right after that, it's transformational conversations. And this is a dynamic interaction about sharing and discovering. This is things like asking questions that you don't have the answers to, and you're trying to find out and listen to the things that are said to gain useful information in a general sense of wisdom. It requires paying close attention that opens up your mind by the infinite possibilities of what lies out there. This allows you to not be set on your opinion that it needs to be a certain way, and it leads to a greater chance of being more innovative that gives way to vast progress. It's just what the name implies. It transforms you into something much more, where your thoughts are not solely ruminating by itself, but it's really a back and forth, sharing information, ideas, general thoughts to figure things out, or at least something to really ponder for later on. This allows a person to be more reflective, that leads them to continuously learn and have greater discipline that opens up the floodgates to develop personally. And it makes them more satisfied with who they are and how they carry themselves. The level of conversations and how consistently you have them determine the quality of your state of mind. The higher it is, the better you feel, as it calms you down to thoroughly process what has been experienced, even in those difficult situations. Whether you achieve what you want or fall short, those unpleasant and pleasant situations that impact you are put into perspective to remind you of the good so you can keep going and remember the lessons learned from the pain felt. Without enough time to digest things, it can keep you stuck in place, anchored to the past, replaying the hurt that keeps the wound fresh and feeling lost. A big part of what allows consistently getting to transformational conversations, which is the highest level, is trusting who is spoken to. Because the brain is designed to keep us safe, it's constantly looking out for threats to avoid them so we can continue to survive. So the people that we speak to, our brains are determining if the person is a threat to us, because if they are, it keeps us defensive, protecting us from physical or verbal attacks. While most people today are not looking to physically harm us, what they say can invoke that same feeling as if being physically attacked. If a threat is not present, it allows us to drop our guard and getting us closer to trust them. And when trust is formed and engaged in, the release of neurotransmitter oxytocin, which is known for love, bonding, and collaboration, helps us be more connected to ourselves and others. Naturally, stress levels are reduced, that allows us to better engage socially to gain from one another. Once that trust is activated, it relaxes the mind so you can better think strategically, be more understanding, and have greater foresight to see the bigger picture so you can focus on the long term. This really helps to listen to what others have to say instead of thinking about a rebuttal or your own input. So it makes you more prone to respond where you truly take things in, slower to speak, choosing your words carefully to make conversations constructive and progressive. It forces the ego to take a break, avoiding saying a bunch of words just to be heard, and instead is geared towards speaking efficiently, getting the most out of each word to use to construct the right sentences, and this is going to deliver the right message. Getting to this point is a process that requires consistency. The first two forms of conversation, transactional and positional, are needed to ascend to transformational. In general, most of us, the younger we are naturally inclined to be transformational in how we speak, but many rules are put in place that conditions people to follow what they are told, and it silences that curiosity, even out of lack of patience by others. Think about a child. Once they learn how to speak, they have a tendency to ask a lot of questions because of sheer curiosity. And over time, this is kind of beaten out of them, where others probably tell them, "You ask too many questions, you're annoying." And that starts to chip away at a person's curiosity, getting them not to ask and just do what they're told, to just follow what others say. Essentially, this causes someone to feel bad about their actions and about themselves, and will become stressed when they think about being curious or asking questions. This state can stimulate the fight or flight response, or even freeze. Because of being more reactive and sensitive, there's a greater chance of perceiving things more negatively. It imprints the experience and the memory that has a large impact on future behaviors. In this state, cortisol is released that lasts 13 to 26 hours. So negative things that you experience are painful, that tends to keep you replaying it consistently. The higher amount of cortisol that is released, the less engaging and connected a person is. That traps them in level 1 conversational, purely transactional, simply saying yes or no, or maybe even shutting down. But when relaxed and trust is built, the prefrontal cortex takes over to think things thoroughly, to be more cooperative. That helps them with better decision making. Getting to this state helps you move on from negative experiences because you process effectively your way through things, talking things out, and can accept and move on for the better. This unleashes the mental load of what you're carrying, where you find things out about what's troubling you, where it becomes about what can be done to figure out a solution. This effect is a layered sense of comfort handling similar situations in the future, as a mental map has been created and is referenced to use the same principles, even if it's slightly different. When you talk things out, it's going through many different scenarios and outcomes to help determine effective options that can be taken. Without it, it leaves many things not thought through that are surprising and often unprepared to handle things well. Essentially, it's putting to rest what's been experienced to be better for it, instead of bitter towards what already happened. In whatever conversations that we have, we're listening to accept or reject. It's that filling out phase, even amongst those that we trust. We do this with friends, loved ones, and family members to see what approach can be taken. Certain subjects will want to be avoided with certain people, even in those that we trust, because of differences of opinion. And this can trigger stress that creates defensiveness, dropping us to the lower levels of conversations. So just because you can open up to someone about certain things and connect, talking about certain things can completely shut down one or both sides. Sensitive topics such as religion, finances, vulnerable emotions or state of being, certain conflicts, just so many things we're navigating to see what to say and what not to. And those areas of sensitivity can be very sharp, that immediately triggers defensiveness and can derail the conversation. Just recently, I was having the conversation with my mom about finances and how we can improve them. And we were in agreement of, or what I thought was going to be in agreement of, what we're going to discuss. And it quickly kind of turned back to a level 2 conversation, purely positional. My intention was to iron out the financial details of the money that we have and how we can use that instead of just saving it. I'm much more inclined to invest money because it works for us. It grows over time. but I wanted to hear my mom's thoughts on what she wanted to do with it. Once I started to mention specific numbers, it quickly went into tangent topics, many things that I'm going to avoid discussing. But what I noticed was I triggered something that invoked a highly emotional response that caused her to defend her ideas or her reasoning. So in this state, we were no longer connected on the subject that we were discussing because of the lack of trust in the situation. While I was listening to what my mom had to say, I was intentional in just listening to her so she can say what's on her mind without feeling she's being interrupted. And at the same time, I was thinking about how can I make this conversation productive? I saw that I was not able to really divert it in the way that I wanted, and there was no resolution that was discussed. This helped me further realize that even though we as people think that we're logic-based, that many of our decisions are purely factual, it just reinforces just how emotionally led we are. I think most of us understand that emotions dictate our behaviors and the things that we do, even when we're conscious of not leading with emotion, they can still get all riled up to be less open to the ideas or the stance that one has when there's opposition involved. It's kind of the mentality of, if you're not with me, you're against me. And that's very survival oriented. That's part of the brain, the amygdala, that takes over and quiets the prefrontal cortex from thinking things through. Me being aware of this helped me to feel less threatened and was just constantly thinking, how can we make this conversation productive? At the same time, I didn't see how I could, but I could mitigate it from escalating to a back and forth, defending each of our positions. And this is part of the sensitivity around the subjects that we discuss. Certain ones you got to be very careful on how you're going to approach them, if you even talk about them at all. But once you can start to recognize this and understand why we function the way we do, it becomes a lot more evident on how to navigate those sensitive areas, to be more open and hear the opposing view out. You know, there was a time where I used to watch sports shows where the host panel and these analysts go over how teams played or an upcoming game. And eventually it got really annoying because of the highly emotional response that some of these people would have. Certain things like, who's the best player? Who's the best team? And they go on to defend and not really state why, but they defend where they're coming from. And much of this was opinion based. So if somebody else would chime in that opposed on their view, they would raise their voices to kind of drown out what others had to say. So there was a lot of interruptions. Eventually I got really tired and moved on from it. And more recently, now I watch the stock market just about every day. And what I really like about it, the people who come on there, is that they talk in a very calm way, making valid points. There's a particular program that I really like called the Halftime Report. And the host, Scott Wapner, they refer to him as the judge because he mediates the debates. He'll have anywhere from 3 to 5 people in an hour-long discussion on various topics and how they relate to company-specific stocks. So Scott will ask things like, hey, what do you think of Google right now? And they're mostly talking about their stock price and where it's going or where they predict it's going. And a panel member might say, you know, I'm heavily invested in Google because of the valuation metrics, their upcoming products that they're working on, and how they're going to increase revenue by a certain percent. But then there's another analyst that might say, you know what? I don't like Google at these levels. I feel like their moat is eroding and I prefer to use capital elsewhere. And each side will make their points, not so much trying to convince the one that's opposing them, but just stating their view on the topic. So when I watch this, I come away very impressed because, for one, both sides generally remain calm and they actually make very valid points. And it's not so much that one's right and one's wrong, but they both can be right. There's multiple ways to make money. It's not only investing in Google, but it could be investing in Walmart, or it could be investing in a smaller company such as Duolingo or Reddit. But too often times, just because somebody opposes what you say doesn't mean that your stance is invalid, that you're wrong. But the amygdala, that's the survival part of the brain, sees it as a threat. So if they're not thinking like me, then they're totally different. They're not aligned with what I value. So that makes them a nuisance to who I am. And I can remember at the beginning of 2022, as the Federal Reserve is increasing interest rates from 0.25% to 5 3/8, there was a particular person that comes on the panel, and like many of them, there was a general expectation that a recession was coming within a year. So he was very negative on the market, and he was more conservative in his investments, which were largely conservative with how he deployed money. But then as the year progressed and a recession didn't materialize, and then 2024 started, he then started to change his stance, saying he's more neutral on stocks. And then he went to being more positive on stocks and would be more aggressive with how he was deploying money. And then there was a particular episode where Scott Wapner asked him, why are you now so positive on stocks when not so long ago you had a negative outlook? And the money manager responds by saying, well, my views change with the data, and I need to be able to recognize that, because if not, I lose out on the opportunity to make money and will lose money. And what really drove home the point was that he's not trying to prove that he's right. He's simply trying to make money, and that involves being able to pivot from the view that he once had. He says it's a very humbling business because you might think one thing and then realize that was wrong. And there's no need to try to dig in and prove that he was right. So while it might seem like he was in a positional state of just having conversations, defending his views, he was showing a lot of transformational conversations because he was open to hearing others out, and coupling that with data helped him be open to what was going on. Obviously, these people that come on these networks understand the art and science of conversations and have been educated and trained and have enough experience to be able to navigate opposing views, difficult conversations, and they too will get emotionally riled up from time to time. But for the most part, they do a really good job of keeping their composure, making the conversations productive. These are great examples of being able to consistently get to transformational conversations. It allows you to take in others' views to be able to decipher what is applicable to you, knowing that you can avoid being dismissive of valuable information. Conversation is such a powerful tool, and when you have somebody that you can trust to talk to, it's really a very empowering feeling to be able to say what's on your mind, move past things for the better. A lot of problems that you face, when you just talk them out, you come up with your own solutions. And when you don't, the person that's hearing you out can provide some context to really get you going in the right direction. When you unload, it immediately changes your mental and physical state for the better. It really is a great stress reliever. And the more that you can do it in a productive manner, the better that you're going to feel. So there's going to be times where you have those moments of just complaining, and that's okay, because it helps to dispel, to throw up the junk that is rattling in your head. And then from there, you can really start to make it a lot more constructive, figuring out solutions of what to do next. It's going to be important to move beyond just complaining and really work through things where you can take action to improve what you're going through. So whatever that you do, what's always going to help you is to just talk out what is on your mind. You know, the good stuff, the ugly stuff, the bad stuff. This helps you better process what you've experienced and kind of put it to rest, because you rationalize and compartmentalize so you're not hung up on living in the past. So those wounds that you suffer from the pain that you felt heal a bit quicker. That allows you to make more and more progress. So use a different level of conversations. And for some people, all you need to do is have transactional conversation There's no need to really go beyond asking and telling. For others, positional conversations will do just fine. But make sure to make time for those transformational conversations where you connect with someone that you trust, and this is truly going to transform you. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in more topics like this, become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. It's your personal development resource so you can build that right mindset so you can live to thrive. All right, until next time.